Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for joining today's webinar, How Continuous Self-Assessment Can Help Grow and Improve Skills. My name is Eric Naberg, and I run operations and marketing here at Scrum.org. And thank you for joining today. I'm joined by Stephanie and Jorgen. They'll introduce themselves in a few minutes, but we'll get a couple of housekeeping options out of the way real quick, some quick guidelines. Your microphones will be muted throughout, but please ask questions. You should see down at the bottom of your screen a little Q&A button. Click on that, ask your questions. We'll take them as time allows, and I'll be moderating those as Stephanie and Jorgen take you through the session. Next slide. Real quick, Stephanie, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello, my name is Stephanie Ockerman. I am the co-founder, or the founder of Agile Socks, training and coaching for agility enablement, and the co-author of Mastering Professional Scrum. I co-authored that with my colleague Simon Reindl. And I'm a professional Scrum trainer and create a lot of content. And so I really focus on while I do work in teams, leadership, product ownership, I have a special place in my heart for Scrum Masters. And really, I want to help Scrum Masters be a catalyst for growth and transformation for their Scrum teams and organizations so that they can also be a part of that thriving and finding their own fulfillment and impact as leaders.
Jorgen?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jorgen Hesselberg. I'm the author of Unlocking Agility and co-founder of Comparative Agility. I am one of those people who can be considered an agile nerd. I love agility, not just because it can create some awesome business results. I've also seen the difference it makes in people's lives. And for me, making the world a better place to work has been my mission. And doing that through data has been very useful for me. And I'd love to be able to help others do the same. So excited to be here and to partner with Scrum.org.
Awesome. Thank you, Jorgen. Thank you, Stephanie. Next slide real quick. So just a little bit for you, those of you new to this series, we run a lot of these webinars and run them generally a few a month. But some of you are new. Who is Scrum.org? Scrum.org is a mission-based organization focused on helping people and teams solve complex problems. We're founded by Ken Schwaber, our chairman, and the co-creator of Scrum. We focus in multiple areas: training, certification, and events like this, ongoing learning, helping you continue to learn. And as part of this, and really a big theme of today, is that ongoing learning, because what this self-assessment allows you to do is continually assess yourself, continually grow, and really look at, where do I need to improve? How do I need to improve? Have I improved? And really looking at ways to improve over time. So next slide. So real quick, and then Jorgen will take you into comparative agility and really start talking about it. Why did we do this? We partnered with Stephanie and Jorgen around exactly this idea of continuous learning and continuous improvement. Comparative agility brings expertise to Scrum.org in helping us to ask the right questions. We know Scrum. Comparative agility understands how to assess people in a way through self-assessing and ask the right questions to be able to provide the right resources in next step. So that combination of comparative agility with Scrum.org and the expertise that we have in Scrum and Agile really come together to help you in these self-assessments. They're free. They allow you to keep learning and keep growing. And with that, I will turn it over to our presenters today, and I'll be back for some Q&A and other things as time goes on. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Eric. And I'll start real brief about comparative agility, not spend much time on this because really the main element here is the survey assessment itself, and Stephanie will take us through that. But just like Eric said, we do focus on surveys. At the end of the day, we like to call ourselves the Spotify of continuous improvement, and we don't have a whole lot of Taylor Swift, but what we do have is really awesome surveys. Our surveys have two things that are unique. Number one, they're all created by domain experts. That really does matter because the questions and the statements are well formed. And the second thing is they've all been validated by data scientists. So that makes sure that the questions are reliable and something you can feel that you can trust, because you know there's been quite a bit of work put into the surveys themselves. The quality is high. And I think you'll notice that when you look at our assessment. We have two main modules. Our flagship is the organizational perspective, which focuses on teams, on programs, on organizations. But an element and a module that we have released recently is the role-based perspective. And that is specific to the critical roles that is important to making sure agility works, not just for teams, but also at scale. So that is the role perspective that's called PI. And in this case, we're talking about the Scrum Master Personal Improvement Assessment. So with this, Stephanie, why don't we talk about how we made this survey? Because I think that's quite unique if you think about the process and the making of this particular offering.
Yeah, so as Jorgen was mentioning, a lot of work actually went into crafting the questions, making sure that we were going to be able to truly show the breadth of the Scrum Master role. And help people understand the breadth of it as they're taking the assessment and achieving their results, and being able to then use that information, that knowledge, to make choices moving forward. So it really does help Scrum Masters truly embrace empiricism, a data-driven approach, and have that continuous improvement mindset as they are practicing their craft. And so many of you know already that being a great Scrum Master is not just about taking a training and or passing an assessment or a credential. Those are important pieces. They are two pieces of what Eric talked about at the beginning with the mission of Scrum.org, right? We need experiential, high quality learning, and then we also want to have that validated learning, and having that professional support is a piece. But we also have to put our knowledge and skills into practice. We need to be regularly reflecting and adapting what worked, what didn't work so well, how could I do that more skillfully next time, what new insights did I gain, what did I realize I don't know, right? And maybe I shouldn't think I know. And so, we need to be integrating those new insights and growing. It's almost like an intuitive wisdom that grows through the experience, through intentional practice. And so, most of you also probably have already learned in your journey that there are no best practices in Scrum, right? There are helpful practices, but it's more about knowing the benefits that you're seeking from those practices. Experimenting with different practices, seeing like, oh, this works for this type of scenario, or these are the benefits we're looking for, but we're not getting it. So maybe we need to try a different practice or create our own, right? We need to be adapting based on the results of those experiments. So unfortunately, there isn't this roadmap or a recipe book that Scrum Masters can use that's going to tell them what to do in any given situation, right? We have to apply our learning and experience and kind of keep growing it over time. And this is the challenge, right? The huge challenge of being a Scrum Master. But to me, it's also what makes the Scrum Master role so exciting, so dynamic. And to me, it's a really beautiful leadership opportunity, in my humble opinion. So the other piece of this that's super important is it aligns with the Scrum.org professional Scrum competencies. So if you're familiar with Scrum.org, their training classes, their assessments, or just some of the content you see that we put out on the Scrum.org website, everything kind of aligns to these competencies, right? To kind of help people understand, what do I need to grow my capabilities in, to continue to improve. And so the visual you see here on the slide, understanding, applying the Scrum framework, developing people in teams, and so on. I won't read them all to you here, but also combined with truly understanding Scrum Master leadership, right? These are the dimensions that you're going to be assessing yourself on through the personal improvement self-assessment, and then also how you will get resources aligned with these different dimensions based on the competencies to kind of help you be more intentional and choosing how you want to grow. So the Scrum Master role, and really just Scrum and agility in general, there's so much breadth right, of the types of skills, the knowledge, right, depending on the product context you work in, the type of team you work in, working in the wider organization, different types of products. Maybe they're software based, maybe they're not. And then there's like a whole bunch in between all of those things. So, the breadth and depth of knowledge and skills that we need is pretty substantial. And so this self-assessment, we went for breadth. So the idea is we're not super deep diving into kind of like one specific topic of developing people in teams, right? We're trying to cover the breadth of that competency area, right? So for each of these competencies, we're looking to cover the breadth of that to give people a really kind of a wide angle lens, a wide angle perspective on how am I doing, right? What do I know? What do I know less? What do I know a little more? What does my team need from me now based on what I'm observing? And then I can more intentionally choose where to focus my time and energy to learn and to grow. And as Jorgen was also mentioning, there's a lot of science behind the design of the self-assessment. So not just covering the breadth, right? That's where the domain expertise does come in, but also working with data scientists to help us craft the questions in ways that help reduce ambiguity and help create more clarity so that as you are taking the self-assessment, you can better understand what is being asked and also kind of be more honest with yourself and be able to answer it in a way that's going to be more useful. And that does bring me to the point here about this is a self-assessment of your capabilities. It's not testing your knowledge, right? So that's one of the big differences between, taking a PSM1 or PSM2 assessment to earn that certification. That is really about kind of validating your knowledge. And so this is more of a self-assessment of your, I would say, knowledge and capabilities, right? How you are able to apply your knowledge, your experience, recognizing like, well, am I seeing the results of these types of things as I am practicing, right? That's all for you to be mindful of, right? So I like to re-emphasize that, and I will re-emphasize that throughout this. You have to be honest with yourself to get value from this tool. The goal is not to just get the highest score, okay? I mean, you could do that if you want, but then there may not be as much there for you to kind of learn and grow. And so a phrase that we've used is you can think of it as a fitness app for the professional. So it is highly personal, right? It's not an endpoint that you're trying to reach. This is a tool we expect that Scrum Masters can use throughout their whole career, a continuous learning journey, right? There's always going to be new things to learn and to discover. And so this assessment really helps you think about the patterns, the norms, the behaviors that are signaling the potential to be more effective as a Scrum Master. And as you know, we always bump up against new challenges, whether the team's evolving, the product's evolving, the environment is evolving. We may move to support different types of teams, different types of products. We might start working on greater organizational challenges. So there's just so much breadth here. And so if you really take ownership of your continuous learning journey, what we mean by that is that one, you're going to be able to have this perspective on yourself, right? Like have a kind of a perspective of an honest look at, well, what am I sensing? What am I noticing? Where have I been in my journey? Where am I going? But then you also have to take the initiative to then decide, well, what am I going to do with this information, right? And that's what we mean by taking ownership. It gives you the ability to continually validate and as you grow and learn. And we often, I like to point out, think we know a lot more than we do when we first start as a Scrum Master. I can say that I have had many humbling moments that I can point towards in my own Scrum Master journey of realizing, oh, wow, I totally forgot that we cannot perfectly plan and perfectly predict and know exactly what practices are going to work, right? Or think that I know because this one thing I did worked with one team, that it's the right thing for this other team. And so, you know, as we go in our journey, I almost think of it as there's like new layers you're reaching, like you're pulling back a layer and realizing like, like I am embracing complexity and ambiguity and unpredictability in a new way now. Like I understand what that means in terms of how I show up as a leader. I'm going to stop assuming I know the answers, right? And look at more of how can I create greater transparency, right? How can I create an environment where we can bring all the wisdom of the team or others in the organization into how we move forward here. And so, you know, that's one I like to give a little bit more of my backstory in this and like show what's possible in, you know, we have this bullet that says, take ownership of your continuous learning journey. And that sounds great. It sounds easy. You know, we say, oh yeah, apply empiricism, continuous improvement, mindset, data-driven. Yeah. But it's like, what does that really mean? And taking that space for yourself to think about, you know, where are you now? Where do you want to go? You know, what is possible? You know, when we really are kind of sinking into that next level of understanding an agile mindset and teamwork and Scrum values and how we be in relationship with others to be more effective at creating valuable outcomes, at solving complex problems. And so the last bullet here, curating a wide range of quality resources to help grow knowledge and sharpen skills. So that's one of the things I really love about this tool is we are actually giving you recommended resources. Now you're still owning your journey and deciding what resources do you need. But the idea here is, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there, right? Like there are so many resources out there, a lot of great ones too, and it can be really overwhelming. There's also some, you know, sorting through things that maybe aren't quite there, right? Like maybe they're a little more emphasizing the mechanics and not quite diving into the why. And so the idea here is to give you recommended resources that you know, are high quality and that you know, we believe are going to help you grow and learn and improve in that specific area of that question. All right, so the tool is designed to be really quick and easy, okay? To give you greater visibility and awareness in, you know, a fairly quick way. And we're gonna demo that for you, all right? So I am going to, if you can stop sharing, I will take over. All right. Give me a second here, find the button, there we go. All right, so what you see up here is the start of the Scrum Master Improvement self-assessment, all right? So I am demoing in a staging environment here, and we've set up some kind of personas that we're going to use. We've kind of mocked up some data to do a little demo and take you through some of the key features that are going to help you get the benefits. So as I look here, I'm going to click the Take Survey button. All right. So you see this pretty simple user interface popping up here. I am aware of my Scrum team's understanding and effective application of the Scrum accountabilities and how they work together to enable success. And so what you see here is pretty straightforward, right? Is this true? Is this more true than false? Neither false nor true, more false than true, and false. So it's a pretty simple scale and consistently throughout the survey. We also have some tooltips here. So when you see the question mark, not every question has one, but where we wanted to make sure we're providing greater clarity of like, what is really meant here, right? Because the question isn't just, do I know what the Scrum Guide says? That's not really what we're getting at. This is more about the ability to apply it. And so we've added some tooltips here to kind of really help people be more intentional and really like kind of dig a little deeper into like, well, what am I really here? Right. So I might think like, oh, well, I do get it to some degree, but maybe I've been struggling with like, I think I'm helping, but there's still, you know, it's not really working great. So maybe I say, maybe it's more true than false. And again, I may rate myself differently than somebody else might, right? So this isn't about comparing. It's not a test where you're looking for the highest score. So for this one, I'm aware of my Scrum team's proficiency in leveraging the Scrum events for effective inspection and adaptation, right? So I may know what the Scrum Guide says, I may know the rules of Scrum, but to really ask myself, like, are we really getting the most out of these events in terms of inspection and adaptation? And so maybe I go with a neither false or true. So I'm not going to read all of these to you, obviously, but I wanted to kind of give you a sense of, some of the questions. They do kind of go in order through those different dimensions we talked about. So similar dimension questions will appear and then moves to the next dimension. It's not like random. It kind of goes with a natural flow. I know when I've done the assessment as well, I would click the back button a few times, just be like, wait, was I honest with myself on that question? Maybe I need to go back. So just like to point out the kind of the basics of navigating here. And I am going to cancel out of this. All right. And what we're looking at here is the dashboard. And I will take you through a few different user personas here. One thing I do want to share is that this is the tool that I wish I had earlier in my own Scrum Master journey. And partly because I'm a very organized person, I like to be organized. And I always found it hard to really be intentional about my own learning and growth. I had, a bunch of bookmarked articles. I would email myself resources like, oh, you need to read this. I had a stack of books, right, that I had not read yet, but they were just sitting there waiting. And so it often felt a little overwhelming, even though I was trying to stay organized. And I was trying to be more intentional in my learning and develop my own self-reflection and adaptation practice. And so, I learned early on in my career that consuming information doesn't work for me. Like, I'm not a person who's just like, read as much as possible, right? Like, I want to intentionally grow my knowledge, practice things, right? Because the true knowledge, the true capability grows through experience and intentional practice. And so this tool, what I like about it is, one, it's giving you greater awareness and visibility to, like I said, that broad lens, but then also it's helping you stay organized. And I'll take you through some features that demonstrate that a bit. All right. So what we're looking at here is one of our personas set up in our staging environment, Jamie. And so what we see here is this visible result area of our dashboard here. And we can see each of those different dimensions, and the color coding will be kind of carried throughout the survey, the self-assessment. And you see the scores for each of those. And then we see our total score to the left. So what we see with Jamie is that, Jamie maybe is a Scrum Master who kind of really came from, maybe the developer background, like very process oriented, like really into empiricism and like process, but maybe has struggled with some of the team dynamics aspect of things. And what does it mean to influence change, with the team and with the wider organization. And so what we can see here is that the developing people and teams is a little bit on the lower side here. And, we also can see here, I want to point out that the survey has been taken more than once. So this is an aspect of where you can see your history over time. Now, you are likely not going to take the self-assessment within a week. This is mocked up test data, so that's why the dates are really close to each other. But what I want to show you is you can actually click on in this top bar the previous assessment, and then you see what happened there. And you may have noticed that in the previous assessment, Jamie rated themselves higher in some of these categories, like understanding and applying the Scrum framework. And so this is actually not going to be that uncommon, because again, at least in my experience, we tend to think we know more than we do, right? And then we start to realize like, oh my gosh, this is almost a never ending learning journey. And there's things I thought I knew and I needed to unlearn them. And so I just kind of, we showed that in this mocked up data as well. And now the other piece I want to show you here is towards the top here. Right now we're in the results dashboard. I'm going to click on progress over time. And so this is another view of kind of the history. And so you can see here those trend lines, right? Where, Jamie likely, got more experience, maybe went to got some support from maybe a coach or went to a professional Scrum training and actually kind of was like, oh, wow, like there's a lot here that I don't know as much about. And got a little bit more honest with himself now that, he had that greater awareness. So that's another little handy tool. And so over time, you're going to be able over the course of your career, this may be something you want to take every maybe quarter or maybe every 6 months, right? It's really a personal decision and likely depends a lot on where you are in your own career and what you have space for. But this is something you're going to kind of be able to go back and look at your history. So I'm going to go back to the results here. All right. And so where does Jamie want to focus now? So what I want to point out is in the bottom section here, this is where the recommendations are. So the suggested resources, recommended resources. And so the way these appear is they're based on score. So the lowest scoring self-assessment questions are going to be at the highest, are going to be higher ordered. But also then I like to point out that they kind of just go in order from like the order of the items. So it's not to say that the first one is a lower number than the second one because the scale is not, like a huge scale of like 100. So this is again where, it's giving you information, but then you are going to be intentional about what do I actually need based on what I'm seeing in these results. And so Jamie might be thinking, you know what, I really am struggling with this team I'm working with. I'm trying to support self-management, but I just am not being successful. They're struggling. What do I do? And so Jamie sees that and Jamie says, all right, I want to see what resources are here. So you can click on the question to expand it. And note, you can see that the color coding and you can clearly see which dimension we're looking at here as well, the developing people and teams. And so if I look down here, what I see is several resources that I can look at. So the icon here kind of gives you a little tip of what type of resource this is. And then we have a short description under each resource so that you get a little information to kind of help you make some choices about, what do you want to go look at. So this one here, this 10 tips to enable self-managing teams is a webinar. So we can see this in the description here. It's a 1-hour webinar. I can see that this is an 18-minute video. We can see this is an article, like a blog post. We can see if we want to go in depth into a professional training. We do reference some more advanced resources where it makes sense for the question. I'm going to click on this one here, professional Scrum competencies, self-managing teams. So this is a Scrum.org kind of like, I would call it an official resource. And so you can see here, there's this additional details here and we can keep clicking through, more information about that Scrum.org has put out to kind of help people really understand what does a self-managing team mean? What does that look like? So I'm going to click back over here. We can see here, if I click on this one, it's going to take us to a short video about self-management here. Okay, so I'm just going to show you a sampling. I'm not going to obviously click through all of them. Let's see here. And then what Jamie wants to do, Jamie says, you know what, I do want to actually watch this video on intro to self-management. So I'm going to click this button here to add it to what is called the personal improvement backlog. So this is what I mean by helping you have some organization, be more intentional. And then let's say we also want to do that webinar. All right, and you see that check mark appears once it's added. And then maybe this article here as well. All right. So if we scroll down, note, it'll show you 3 by default. I can also click to not expand that question to bring it back to the main questions only. Load more recommendations. So it's going to give you 3 at a time, 3 at a time, 3 at a time. So you can keep going through here and see everything, right? As much as you want to pull into the screen. And so maybe Jamie also is curious about how to be better at using a coaching approach. So clicking here, expanding that. You can see here, we're also referencing where we're not necessarily like the only experts or the core experts in a topic, right? We might link to other resources that we have found that are useful, that we think are relevant to both, to Scrum and Agility, but also are coming from maybe the experts. So we're linking to like Coactive or some different expertise here as well. All right, so maybe I'm going to add, this is a podcast I want to add. And I want to know more about Agile coaching in professional Scrum. So I'm going to click on that one as well. All right, so you might be thinking, well, where are these things going? Okay, so I'm going to scroll back up here. And remember at the top, we are on our results. We looked at progress over time. And then now we're going to look at personal improvement backlog. And so this is where those resources that we've added are going to be. And then I can mark these as completed. So let's assume Jamie has watched this video. So I put the check mark here, and notice you will have your history. So there I can click on completed and have kind of a history. So one thing I like to point out about this that I immediately saw as a benefit that I would have liked to have had is kind of having this history helps me when I am doing my regular reflection practices, like maybe quarterly, maybe annually. And I'm thinking about, well, what have I really done to grow and to learn? And I can use this for conversations with my leadership as well. I can use this with conversations with a coach or a mentor. And so I have both history, but I also have, here's what I want to do. And so if I want to go into a conversation about my professional development with my manager, right, I can have this kind of ready and say, like, here's why this relates to me growing in this area and this skill. And then maybe we set aside time and professional development budget to go into some deeper, maybe some more advanced training and things like that. All right. So I'm going to move back to the results here. All right. And so one thing I do want to add real quickly is there is a temptation, I would say I have this temptation to just click all the resources and say, I want to add all of them. I want to look at all of these resources. And so I just encourage you to really like kind of pause, take the breath and think about, well, what do I really need now? And then next, I can always come back to this. So again, this is the thing I love about this tool is, I spend time today. I go through some of these resources. I set aside some time to do that. And then maybe at the start of the next week, or maybe the start of the next month, I come back in, I look at where I'm at in the progress of going through the personal improvement backlog. And I say, okay, I've done these things. Now I'm going to go back to the results and look at adding some more. Right. So it kind of helps you take a more sustainable pace because you're not worried that, oh, this is the only time I'm ever going to see that resource. And so that's just a tip I have, is to not go crazy and like add everything right away. Because that's really just the same as making your product backlog a dumping ground for every stakeholder request. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to switch to another profile. Here. Oops, I got to close some things. There we go. And so this is another mocked up persona that we have in our staging environment. This is Martina. And what I can see here, right, I can see her history as well. I'm going to click on the progress over time. And so maybe Martina has invested really in kind of growing. She struggled with the developing and the people and teams. We can see that. And so she kind of really invested in that space and kind of learned some new skills, took some training, maybe got some support from a mentor, and has really grown in that space. And maybe now she's starting to realize that her product owner is bumping up against some specific challenges. And so, she wants to think about, well, how can I support my product owner? Right. And so even though maybe her skill is fairly good in this space, right? Like she feels pretty good about it, right? Managing products with agility, she's at a 4 overall. There's a very specific challenge that that she's facing with her product owner around defining value, right? So maybe something shifted in that space, and so she can click here. So it can be a very targeted tool. Is kind of the point I want to make. Is there's the broad perspective and kind of the iterative, incremental improvement. And then there's the targeted, hey, this is a challenge. I'm going to go see what is here for me, right? And then I can add, maybe some resources here that look interesting. All right. And maybe I'm even considering at this point that if I'm Martina, that I might be ready for a more advanced training in this area, adding that. And so then I can go to the personal improvement backlog here and see that Martina already had some items here as well. Okay. So one more little feature, I say little feature, but it's pretty powerful feature that I want to show you here is Martina is going to share the results here with her coach. So if you have a coach that you're working with or a mentor that's kind of helping you improve, helping guide your journey, there's a coach sharing feature. So here in the upper right corner, when I click on coach sharing, okay, I can add a coach. And give me a second, I have to copy the email address I want to use. And so your coach would need to have an account in Comparative Agility so that they would be able to access it. But you're basically going to add the email. Might be having an internet glitch here.
You may have to click comma or something.
Okay, well, test environment fun. Luckily, I already have something set up that we can see this. So normally you would click done and it would share the results. So what I want to show you, the last thing I want to demonstrate to you is I am going to show you the coach's view. So what is the coach or the mentor going to see? So I've clicked over to a different account, clicked over to the coach account essentially. So you can see that the person who's doing the coaching is also using this self-improvement, or sorry, this personal improvement self-assessment for their own learning. And so what the coach is going to see though is when they click on this little caret next to Scrum Master Improvement, they will see the results of other people who have shared with them. So you see it says shared with me, and I had already shared Jamie's with the coach account. So I can click on that, and then now it's loading Jamie's results. And then something that's interesting, and I want to point out, this is all happening with conversations, right? Like this isn't meant to be an asynchronous work with your coach tool completely, right? Like when we're getting coaching, when we're getting mentoring support, right? We're in conversation. And so maybe based on some conversations, Jamie has asked me, like, hey, here's where I think I want to start focusing on. And I've given Jamie some feedback. And Jamie says, can you take a look at my personal improvement backlog? And then if there's any resources you think that would be helpful, can you add those to my personal improvement backlog? And so I can see the personal improvement backlog, and something that's pretty cool is I can actually add my own recommendations. So I could go to the existing recommendations and just do some check marks next to the ones that I think would be best for Jamie based on my knowledge and understanding. But I can also add some my own resources, right? If I have something else that's not really part of this self-assessment today, I can add my own to support Jamie. And so this is just adding it to Jamie's personal improvement backlog. So I'm going to create that, right? And you can see it's tagged as my recommendation, right? The coach's recommendation. Okay. So that's kind of how you can use this to work with coaches and mentors as well. Okay. And so again, just a little bit of advice I like to wrap up with here, and I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so that Jorgen can bring us back to our slides. What what we want to make sure we're doing is, one, remembering this is a self-assessment, being very intentional and reflective in it. It is 60 questions, and I would say maybe 10 to 15 minutes is how long. If you're not just speeding through, reading as fast as possible and clicking a button, maybe you're going to give yourself 10 to 15 minutes to take the survey, and reading some of those tool tips as well will be helpful. So I would recommend that, and just keeping in mind that the goal is to get information, right? It's that broader perspective. It's about curiosity, openness, and this is just one tool in the overall, like, how am I doing? But it's an important tool, right? It's an important step, being able to truly reflect on ourselves and the impact we're creating and what's happening around us, what's needed, so that we can be more intentional in our learning and growth. And then I'm going to turn it over here to Jorgen to talk about another little fancy, interesting feature that some people might find useful.
Thank you for that, Stephanie. That was a great presentation, by the way. Another thing that I just want to point out here is that you can also compare yourself to the community overall. And the only reason you would do that is not because of a competition. You're not trying to beat the community sort of thing, but I think it can be a really good sort of a baseline. When you look at how you're doing, sometimes it can be tough. And when you start off your Scrum Master journey, especially if you're honest with yourself, you might not do so well over time. And it's good to have an idea of how the rest of the community is doing. And what we will find is that in the beginning, these sort of metrics will look pretty high. I mean, that's just exactly what Stephanie was saying. Most people tend to rate themselves pretty high in the beginning. They think they know everything. But as we start to learn, we start to understand that, you know what, maybe we didn't know all the things we thought we knew. And we can also see that being reflected in the World Index. So this is just great information that you can use as a way to sort of look at how you're doing over time, and you can break that down by dimension as well. So I think that's super important. At the end of the day, this is about openness and honesty. It's about psychological safety. The thing that you should know, that all of this data is personal and confidential. Nobody will see this data other than yourself. Scrum.org has access to the data at an aggregate level, which means they will not see specifically what Jorgen or Stephanie is doing. They will just see how we're doing over time and at the aggregate level, so that they can use that data as a way to improve their services. So you can feel confident that this data will not be shared with anyone, or no third parties. But why don't we wrap this up and look at some of the benefits, Stephanie? I think you did a really good job of going through this from a demo perspective. It's good to kind of summarize all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've seen some of these features, and now that you've gotten to see kind of they're pretty easy, kind of like very user-friendly, very simple to use, but how the power of that simplicity, like that's one of the things I talk about, is like the power of simplicity to approach complexity, right? Because what can be more complex than like your Scrum Master learning journey over the full career, different teams, different products, different challenges, different organizations, different industries. It's very complex. And with that huge breadth of capabilities we talked about. So now that you've seen kind of the simplicity of the survey, right, that's the stuff I kind of geek out on, is let's take a simple approach to help us like navigate the complexity. And so you can see where we're giving these, kind of more tailored insights, so that, we can really have that breadth of understanding of the role. And then these recommendations that we have, right, being curated so that you're not in that position of just, I've spent so many hours down like Google rabbit holes, like researching topics and trying to like look at what is the resource that's going to help me. And so this is kind of like bringing a little bit more simplicity. I'm not saying this is everything you'll ever need to know, but that it is a really great starting point, and something you'll likely come back to and work your way through over time. And it's just all integrated there, right? So that's super helpful. And then the data-driven aspect. So as Jorgen was saying, the privacy of this data is super important, but having aggregate information, like aggregate data, is going to help us have a data-driven approach to continuously improving this tool. Right, we're going to be looking at, how are people responding to the questions? Does it seem there's maybe confusion or lack of clarity? Right? Do we need to? Are there questions that maybe don't need to be separate questions? Right. So kind of looking at what the data tells us there. but also like what resources are people using? Like what are they finding helpful? It was important to us to have a wide range of resource formats. So, written short articles, short videos, then the longer form webinars where people can go more into stories and examples, some professional training. So people kind of get a sense of which training is going to give me which skill or knowledge area. And even there's podcasts, there's case studies. So we wanted to make sure there was a wide range of resources here to support different learning preferences, but also just kind of like different levels of advanced topics. And really, again, just iterating how this helps you take ownership, right? You have a personal improvement backlog. You can create a simple process to be iteratively measuring, visualizing, and planning your own improvement over time. And then if you choose to share this input, this information, this data, with a coach or a mentor, right? This makes that a simpler process to do if you choose to do that. Anything else I missed here?
No, I think you're very humble. One thing I just want to say, thank you to Stephanie, because not only was it a lot of work coming up with these questions, but one thing that she did very well was to work on those resources. There is so much information out there now. So if you're trying to be good at anything and you do a Google search, you will be overwhelmed. But what Stephanie did was to take the time to really curate, go through every single resource that's on here and make sure that what you see here, although it's not everything that's on the internet, obviously, there are resources here that are validated and that you can trust. And I think that removing that noise in itself is a huge benefit. So I just want to thank you for that, Stephanie. Another thing as a shout out to Scrum.org is that this is free. And this is one of those things that, people talk about. Okay, I have to do this. I have to get this certification. I have to pay this. This is for the community. It is free and it is for everyone. So I think that's a great thing that benefits everyone when it comes to becoming a better Scrum Master. And honestly, I think you're right, Stephanie. It's probably one of the most important roles we have in Agile when you think about it. So thank you again for that work.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you both. Hopefully you understood a little more. Hopefully you've seen the value in it. And we've got a lot of questions, so we'll start going through and hopefully answering some of those. I want to hit a couple that were repeated. And Jorgen, just you can go back up to the last slide so people see the link. Jorgen, cool, thank you. Yes, this is free. We are not charging for this. We're not forcing you to, do something first. We want you to help to improve. We want to help you improve and really enable you and empower you for improvement. That is our mission, and that is a big part of it. So there is no cost for this. There is no cost to take this, and you can take it over and over again. Use that QR code or check it out. I put in the chat as well. The link to this, it's on our homepage, so you can find it there if you can't find it. The other question was, where do I find it, which is also there. So let's go through and our panel here can answer some of the questions. Oh, there was one other one, which are there other ones coming? And possibly we're going to learn from this one, right? We're going to inspect and adapt and learn from this. And I wouldn't be surprised if other ones come in the future. There was a few people asking, is there one for coaches or for Agile coaches? And my first answer would be, use this one. Because if you're an Agile coach, yeah, right, Steph? I mean, if you're an Agile coach, well, part of what you're doing is very similar to what a Scrum Master does. And a Scrum Master really is, in many ways, an Agile coach, depending on how you define that term. So use this one first, because this is all about how you're helping people in teams and really self-assessing your skills and ability to do that. So I would look at this one first. And you can use that from an Agile coach perspective. Are there other ones for product owners and developers and so on coming? Possibly. We're going to learn from this and get this data. There was a question here about, how do I know how I can compare to others? So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit, Jorgen, about, how you can see how you compare to others and the like.
Yeah, and you saw maybe that in the previous screen there. You can look at how you're doing compared to the community, and that is the community in aggregate. So it's a rolled up view and a rolled up average that will change over time, but you will get an idea sort of compared to the world index, so to speak, how you're doing. But again, this is not a competition. It's not about beating the world, so to speak, but it's a nice sort of baseline to say that, you know what, they're also struggling. The rest of the world is also struggling in certain areas. And it's good sometimes to see that baseline, because sometimes you'll do better and sometimes you do worse, but that doesn't mean that that your journey ends either way. You don't become, agile, you become more agile.
Yeah.
And that's part of what we're looking
Yeah,
at.
and just one more thing I'll add is, remember, this is a self-assessment. So like, somebody who's an amazing Scrum Master might actually rate themselves lower on certain things than somebody else, because it's a self-assessment, right? So keeping that in mind, like this is absolutely not to be used for like managers to try to like, this is, again, that's not that purpose, but it's really about that intentional practice, right? So that's what I would encourage people to look at, is like, less about the comparative to others. Like, there is the feature, as we said, that can be interesting information, and it's about your intentional practice. And I always ask the question, like, if you're struggling, right, for whatever reason, whether it's your own knowledge and skills, or whether it's because challenges in the organization, right, that might be holding certain things back, what am I doing about it is the question, right? How am I showing up, right? Like, so again, trying to use it to think about like, well, actually, I may be struggling to have this change, but what other skills can I be using, like my leadership skills, my facilitation skills, right? So it's giving you that breadth of thinking about, as a Scrum Master, you have a lot of different levers to pull. You have a lot of different things you can bring to kind of get creative about solving challenges. And so like, that's a lot of the work I do in my in-depth coaching programs. And that kind of influenced a lot of like, well, how do we put this out here in a way where I'm not working directly with you, but I'm trying to help people see like this breadth of what's possible, and that they can get creative when this approach didn't work. Well, let me try to come at it from this angle.
Cool, thank you. Real quick, the slides will be posted with the recording, and it will be up on our website within 24 hours. So it will be there. There's a bunch of people asking about that. So here's a great question. This is an interesting one. Stephanie, you showed how I can share this with my coach to get feedback. Is there value in sharing it with my team for them to give me feedback?
My initial thought on that is I wouldn't use this tool for that, because there's a difference between questions that are about self-assessing versus other people giving you feedback around how you're showing up for them, right? Like, so I just want to be clear that that wasn't what that was not the intention with which this was created. And I feel like if we think of like a big puzzle and like all the different pieces, like there's certification, there's training, there's self-assessment, and then I would say there's being, getting feedback from my team. Like, does my team feel this, right? Do they feel like I'm showing up in ways that are honoring this? And that would actually probably use different questions in the assessment than a self-assessment. Maybe that's potential things for, other potential products in the future, maybe, but I wouldn't necessarily use this for that. But you could use this to drive conversation about asking your team for feedback. Like, I feel like I'm doing this, but I really want some honest input around, like, what is the experience like for you? How are you experiencing me? What else do you need from me? Right. So I think this self-assessment can point you towards having better conversations about that in ways that will help you to grow.
Well, thank you. There are a bunch of questions here around, I'm a Scrum Master for multiple teams. Do I take this differently depending on the team I'm assessing myself for? I mean, the short answer, I think, to me would be you're assessing yourself as a full set of skills, not how are you the Scrum Master for this team versus this team, to help make you a more holistic Scrum Master. But thoughts?
I would agree, right? Like, it's your skills as a whole, your knowledge as a whole, And I think that's one of the things that actually makes you humble is when you start to work with a new team for the first time and you're like, oh, wow, what's working for this team isn't working for this team. Like, I got to expand my range here, right? So I think and that might actually cause the going down. Because again, it's a self-assessment. It's not judging, are you getting outcomes? Right? That's a different conversation, right? It can point towards, are you getting outcomes? Like, it's certainly going to point you towards, am I doing the things? Do I understand the capabilities? Am I showing up in ways that lead to valuable outcomes that create, strong team dynamics? Am I doing those things? It's likely to lead to those outcomes, but this isn't actually asking you questions like, my team is regularly delivering valuable, high quality products, right? That's a different thing. Not unrelated, but it is kind of a different focus. So that's kind of like a broader perspective on that question of why it is the holistic you. But that's a very good point around what causes us to kind of like do this in our learning journey, right? And our realization of what is possible with our agility journey.
Thank you, Stephanie. I think we have time probably for one or two more. There's one just more around the tool itself. Can you order your backlog, your learning backlog?
Yeah, I can answer that. Currently, you can't. It's all set up now by chronologically. So when you add it, it becomes on the top, and when you add another one, that will become the top. That will be a feature that will be joined though. So you can do that in the future. So yeah, look out for that.
Great, thank you. Another one. There's a lot of questions about the value of assessing over time, and do you use the same questions to assess yourself over time? The answer is yes. Right? If we're going to be assessing ourselves over time, we want to assess ourselves on the same thing. And this isn't a test. This isn't a certification. It's not about knowledge. It's about ability and your ability and skills in this case, as a Scrum Master, and you're evaluating, am I getting better? As Stephanie kind of pointed out earlier, often people will rate themselves a little higher at first, and then they start to dig into it and read the resources and understand a little more. And you'll often see a little bit of a dip before you even start coming back up as you become more honest with yourself or have stronger understandings around some of the concepts in the areas that are being asked. So there's definitely there's questions around, will we change the resources and change the survey over time? Maybe. We'll continue to inspect and adapt, see how things are going, look at the results, look at how the resources are being used, get feedback from people, because they're always giving us feedback on the resources. We look at the ratings, rate those resources. If you think something's not strong, let us know, and we look at the ratings of the resources on at least the ones on our website, and continually adjust and manage to move those. So with that, I want to be conscious of our time box. I want to be conscious of your all's time as you've been here. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you, Stephanie and Jorgen. Thank you to the audience for taking this time out of your day. Check it out. Use it. It's free. The only thing it costs you is a little bit of time, and hopefully out of that time you get value and you learn and you grow and you improve over time. As I said, we have no intention to charge for this. We have no intention to make you take our PSM1 before that or anything like that. This is about our mission of helping people and teams solve complex problems, and one way of doing that is assessing yourself and understanding where you need to improve and where you need to grow. So with that, again, thank you all very much. Thank you to our panel, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.